I told Leona to go right away. My dad's tone sliced through the dining room like a knife, harsh, icy, and carefully spoken. I remained rooted to the spot next to the long, gleaming table, my hands shaking as they held the untouched glass of water. My chest felt constricted, as if someone had cinched steel around my ribs and was tightening them. Everyone was staring at me, my stepmother Maureen's arrogant smirk flickering, my older brother Trevor sneering with his arm casually resting on the chair back, and even my baby sister Paige, who didn't even bother to conceal her smirk as she took out her phone to film. "Are you serious right now?" I questioned, my voice barely audible. "You're actually throwing me out? Right now, Dad's expression didn't budge. "You're just a waste of space." "You always have been. You haven't achieved anything with your life. You're 26, penniless, and still pursuing silly dreams. This family doesn't owe you a single thing." It felt like all the air had been forced out of me. The stress in the room didn't lessen. It worsened. "You're pathetic," Trevor said, chuckling and shaking his head like I was a complete joke. "Honestly, how are you even related to us?" I faced my father. "I quit my job to care for Mom when she was sick. I sacrificed everything." "Your mother is gone," Leona, Dad barked. "Quit using that as an excuse for your shortcomings. She's not around to cover for you anymore." Something inside me broke. I gazed at the painting on the wall above the fireplace. My real mom, not Maureen. Not the woman who settled in as if she'd always been a part of the scene. The painting showed Mom's tender, brown eyes, forever sweet and compassionate. She would never have permitted something like this to happen. I wiped my eyes to stop the tears and attempted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. I muttered to myself, "I am not staying here another night. I don't want any of your money." "I never have," Dad let out a laugh. "Good, because you won't be getting any. Trevor will be the one inheriting everything when I'm gone. He's shown he's worthy. You're just a burden." Trevor lifted his glass as though he was already celebrating. "That's right," Dad said, directing a hand toward the rest of the people seated at the table. "This is what I leave behind. These are my offspring. You," he said, pointing directly at me as if I was a speck of filth on his shoe, "were an error." I just stood there. Nobody came to my defense. Nobody stood up for me, not even Paige. "Get out," he repeated, his tone still even and unwavering. "And don't come back." I should have broken down and cried. I should have pleaded with him, but I didn't. I stood up straight, fighting back the agony in my chest, and I met each of their gazes. "You're not the one who will be sorry," I murmured, and then I turned and walked away. I was alone in the cold night. I was left with nothing, no cash, no place to live. Just a tiny overnight bag I'd taken with me for this weekend's trip, and a checking account that didn't even have sufficient funds to last me the next few days. But I was not going to grovel, not to them. Never again, and they had no knowledge of the one thing that would change everything. The will was not yet signed. My mother's will was the central point. The lawyer would be reading it out loud within a day and a half, with all of them there. Honestly, I didn't have any idea what it contained. However, I understood my mom. She always saw me, truly saw me. The person at the table that no one there genuinely understood. I was about to dismantle their carefully constructed world. I ended up sleeping in the back of my car that night. It was situated at the very edge of a gas station parking area, beneath a street lamp that flickered and hummed like a persistent mosquito, keeping me awake all night. With the engine off and the air chilly, the only thing keeping me from freezing was the hoodie I hadn't given back to my ex 6 months before. It still carried his scent, faded but there. I tried to take shallow breaths. I struggled to sleep. Every time I shut my eyes, I visualized my dad's face, expressionless and cold, and heard his words echoing in my head. "You're a burden." It wasn't the first time he'd expressed that sentiment. Yet it was the first time he'd uttered it with such finality and in front of others. I was ashamed, furious, and wounded, but I wasn't crushed. As the sun came up, I sat on the curb, drinking a bitter coffee from the gas station, looking through online job postings and hopping for any sort of hourly work. I couldn't continue waiting for things to magically happen anymore, especially after being tossed aside by my own family. That's when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, and I almost let it go to voicemail. But some feeling inside me urged me to answer. It was Leona on the line. I responded, attempting to sound composed. I heard a voice, slightly staticky, on the phone. "Hello, this is Andrea Holt." I'm the lawyer managing Margaret Flynn's affairs. My mom. I felt a sudden hitch in my breathing. Yes, I replied quietly. That's me. She continued. I'm calling to confirm that the will reading is scheduled for tomorrow at midday. Your father and siblings are confirmed to attend. I will be present, I instantly responded. There was a momentary silence. Subsequently, her tone became more gentle. She added, she wanted you to be right next to me when I read it. My voice got caught in my throat. She did, in fact, want that? Yes. She included precise directions. There's a sealed letter she wanted you to open beforehand. I held the phone even closer to my ear, quickly blinking my eyes. All right, thank you. After the call disconnected, I remained still for quite some time. A sealed letter. I had a feeling this wasn't going to be your average will reading. My mother had always been a person who expressed herself always. Even now, she still had something to communicate to me. The following morning, I went into the attorney's office, dressed in the best attire I had left, a simple navy blue dress that I had acquired many years before for a university function, matched with old, worn black flats. I arranged my hair in a low bun and attempted to hide the dark circles under my eyes using inexpensive concealer. It wasn't especially effective. When I entered the modern, glass-walled conference room, all gazes focused on me. Trevor's eyes expanded in surprise and then quickly narrowed. Paige whispered something to Maureen and they both started giggling. Dad, he simply stared at me as though I was a specter that had the audacity to show up. I thought I told you to stay away, he grumbled. I'm not here for you, I replied plainly. Andrea, the attorney, stood and gave me a kind, understanding smile. Leona, you're right on schedule. Please take a seat here. Right next to her, directly facing my father, he looked as if he had tasted something truly awful. This is absurd, Trevor said, flailing his arms. She doesn't even belong here. Mom hardly spoke to her at the end. Why is she sitting there? Andrea didn't react at all. Because your mother asked. Everything that transpires in this room is because of her specific wishes. Then silence. Andrea reached into her bag and retrieved a cream-colored envelope, which was sealed with red wax. My name was written on it in gentle, slanting handwriting. My chest tightened. I hadn't seen her handwriting in nearly 2 years. She handed the letter to me. Please go ahead. She wanted you to read it before I begin, she said. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. I opened the letter. And the instant I saw her words, I felt her. My dearest Leona, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're in a room full of people who likely wish you weren't present. But I need you to stay, sweetheart. No matter what they say, I've watched you struggle your entire life just to be noticed. To be heard, to be loved, and they never gave you what you deserved. I'm going to do this for them no matter what. Eventually, everything will become clear. Just have faith in me. I love you, Mom. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I closed the letter, holding it against my heart while fighting back the tears. I didn't pay any mind when Trevor snickered. Oh, come on. Fake tears, huh? What did she write? A farewell note. Andrea cleared her throat. Let's get started. The initial part of the reading was just the usual lawyer talk, full of legal terms and procedures. But then she stopped. And now Andrea announced, her voice taking a more serious turn. We'll move on to the allocation of personal property as per Margaret Flynn's instructions. Dad sat up straighter. Trevor leaned in. Trevor Flynn, Andrea read aloud. To you, my firstborn, I give the classic car collection in the West Garage, along with a $20,000 savings account in your name. Trevor looked stunned. Is that all? Paige sat up straight. Hold on, that's all he gets? Andrea didn't hesitate. Paige Flynn. To you, I give my jewelry collection, except for the emerald pendant which is staying in the family vault. Paige let out a gasp of disbelief. That's it? Just the jewelry? Are you serious? My father's face was slowly reddening, and then to my husband, Alan Flynn, everyone went silent. Andrea looked right at him. I leave nothing. The room erupted in chaos. What? Dad got to his feet, knocking over his chair. What is going on here? You caused her pain, Andrea said in a quiet voice. She left you nothing. Trevor leaped to his feet. This has to be an error. She wouldn't do this. You need to look at the will again. Andrea responded, showing me the page she'd turned to that had the notary stamp and my mother's signature on it. Then she addressed me and my daughter, Leona, saying she was done. An awkward quietness descended upon the room. My inheritance involves my whole estate, including the home, all of the money in the bank, the money from my savings, the Italian vineyard, and the stock I had in the publishing company. I was stunned. Wait, what? I mumbled. The approximate worth of all the assets was almost $12 million, Andrea stated. Trevor's jaw dropped. Maureen went completely pale. Paige gasped in disbelief. However, my father was the one who broke the quiet. This can't be true, he bellowed. She never would have done this to me. I was the one who took care of her. Andrea produced another document. However, she mentioned calmly, here's a signed letter from your wife. It detailed your unfaithfulness, financial dishonesty, and the emotional cruelty that you inflicted, along with evidence the private investigator supplied. She pushed the letter across the table. My father's hands were unsteady. You wrecked everything, he whispered, directing his statement toward me. I met his gaze with a feeling that had been dormant for quite a while. Control, actually, I murmured it was you. And for the first time ever, no one mocked me. No one made fun of me. They were all too preoccupied with their own unraveling. You orchestrated this, Trevor grumbled, giving me a hateful look as though I'd just robbed him of his future. No, I replied, keeping my voice even. Mom did. Andrea stood up. The will is the final word. If anyone tries to fight it, we will move forward with the evidence detailed in Mrs. Flynn's enclosed documentation. She gave me a file. You should probably read this alone, Leona, she said. Your mom left you letters and documents very detailed. I just nodded, holding it tight as if it were a shield. You're not taking my home away from me, my dad snarled, taking a step towards me, but Andrea interrupted him. Sir, if you don't leave now, I'll have to call security. His face tightened. For a flash, I thought he might completely lose it. Then with a nasty look, he turned to me. She's made a massive error, he spat out. You're not cut out for this kind of power. Actually, I stated, locking eyes with him, but I am made to survive you. He sneered and stomped out. Trevor and Paige went after him, too shocked to even speak. Only Maureen stayed behind. She hated me, didn't she? She asked in a low voice, finally dropping her facade. I gave her a good look. She felt sorry for you, she whispered, her eyes glistening with tears. She just turned and went. Andrea put her hand on my shoulder. You all right? I nodded. I will be. I spent the next few days reading through my mom's letters. She had penned everything, the emotional abuse, the lies, and the favoritism. Even the small memories, how she would hear my cries in the attic while they partied below. How she had always wanted me to forgive her for staying silent. She wasn't able to protect me when she was alive, but in death she corrected it. One letter stood out more than the rest, the last one. Leona, take advantage of this second chance. Construct your own existence, not to get back at anyone, and certainly not for their sake, but exclusively for yourself. There is still goodness in the world, it's still present. You just have to be courageous enough to be the first to extend it. My mom's message made me tear up, not because I was sad, but because somebody finally understood the real me, truly saw me. Time went by. I didn't evict anyone from the house. I didn't freeze their accounts or gloat over their failures. But I did change all the locks on the doors. I brought on a small team to handle the estate, with the goal of reviving the vineyard, and I began writing once more, something I hadn't done in ages. Then one evening there was a knock at the gate. It was Paige, alone, with no makeup on, no phone in her hand, and tears streaming down her face. Can I come in? She quietly asked. I hesitated, but then I opened the gate. We sat in silence at the kitchen table, at that same table where my father had once laughed at me. Now it was just Paige and me, and she seemed diminished, weary, like a ghost of the confident girl who'd once filmed my removal. I didn't know she left everything to you, she said softly, fiddling with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. We all thought she'd divide it up or give it to Dad. You were okay with that? I asked, crossing my arms. She let out a long sigh. Honestly, I didn't even think about it. I guess I just expected to get something. We all did. But seeing him lose everything, watching Trevor fall apart and Dad drink like he's dying, I started to understand how messed up we all are. I kept quiet because a portion of me still held reservations about her. She stated, her tone trembling, that she came here because she wanted to apologize. I gazed at her. I was unkind, she quietly admitted. I witnessed them destroy you and I took no action. I made fun of you, but you never deserved that. Tears again filled her eyes. I didn't move to provide her comfort. I simply stayed put, observing the situation play out, witnessing her face something she had never known before, being held accountable. Gradually, she lifted her gaze to me. "Do you despise me?" I considered it. "No," I replied, "but I don't trust you, not yet." She agreed, wiping her face. "That's understandable." A brief silence followed. "I want to improve," she whispered quietly. "I want to make amends." My mom's letter played in my thoughts. "There's still goodness in the world. You simply have to be courageous enough to be the first to offer it." I sighed deeply. "You can stay for dinner," I eventually said. "I can't promise anything more than that." Her eyes brightened, and for the first time in a long while, I sensed something genuine within her. The subsequent few days brought more surprises. Trevor was taken into custody for attempting to cash out one of my mother's old accounts, one that was officially frozen following her passing. It was fraud, identity theft, and financial wrongdoing. The perfect child was falling apart. Dad had left the area, depleted, furious, and fearful. Andrea contacted me to inform me that he'd attempted to contest the will, but he gave up once the court showed the private investigator's findings. Things were falling apart all around me, but I was just getting started. I didn't feel any need to chase after them. Their ruin wasn't about getting even. It was all about fairness. The truth was all that mattered. And I was completely occupied with creating something superior, something I could call my own. One day, a letter showed up at my door, written by hand from a lady I'd never met before. It began, "Dear Leona, your mother once assisted my family when we had absolutely nothing. She anonymously sent us food and took care of my son's hospital bills. She once told me her daughter had the most generous heart she had ever known, and that eventually the world would recognize it. I believe that time has come." I held the letter close and I was trembling. My mom never shared any of this with me. She didn't simply leave me the property or the funds. She bequeathed me her heritage, and I was finally the one to carry it on. After a few months passed, the house no longer gave off his vibe. It was completely mine now. Those old, framed pictures came down. The depressing color scheme got replaced with cheerful ones. The quiet corridors now had music, some gentle jazz in the mornings, and my favorite albums playing at night. It was still large, still too much for someone like me, but I was learning to inhabit the space, rather than hide within it. The vineyard was flourishing again. I'd recruited a good, industrious crew who valued the work more than the monetary gain. Mr. Gallo, who had worked with Mom for a long time, greeted me. After I told him my name, he rubbed his hands on his work clothes and remarked that I was the spitting image of her, only fiercer. I grinned because he was absolutely right. For years, I'd been trodden upon. I'd been disregarded and rejected by the very individuals who should have been my protectors. But at this point, I had something greater than retribution, inner tranquility and a clear sense of direction. Then one cool autumn afternoon, I encountered him once more. It was Dad, standing at the gate like a spectral figure, unshaved, gaunt, with eyes that were sunken and lifeless. I could have chosen to pretend he wasn't there. I could have alerted security, but instead I went out to meet him. He initially remained silent. Then he said that I resembled my mother. I agreed. "I lost everything," he mumbled. "The house, the vehicles, even Trevor won't speak to me." I didn't respond. "I wanted to despise you," he confessed. "I still don't comprehend why she gave it all to you." I met his gaze, unwavering, because I understood that she trusted me not to squander it. A slight movement played on his lips. He almost smiled, but didn't quite manage it. "I guess she was right," he mumbled. I paused. He shuffled uncomfortably. "I don't need money. I've learned my lesson," he said. I thought you might want to hear that I'm sorry." I examined him closely, observing the lines etched on his face, the weakening of his defenses. He wasn't a tyrannical presence any longer, only a person consumed by regret. "I don't forgive you," I told him. "Not yet, perhaps never." He slowly nodded, "but I also don't harbor any hatred towards you." He seemed taken aback. "I figured something out," I told myself. "Holding on to hatred just damages the one doing it. I've released quite a bit of it personally." A moment of silence. He murmured his appreciation. I pivoted and returned inside, shutting the gate. Several weeks went by. Paige started helping out at a local shelter. We always shared a Sunday dinner together. There was still effort needed for both of us, but we were working at it, and that made a difference. I converted one of the unused rooms into a communal writing room. A couple of local young women visited every week. One of them made me think of me at 17, quiet and unnoticed, but she was smiling there. She giggled. I recognized in her what my mother must have seen in me. One evening, as the sun went down behind the vineyard and painted the sky with gold, I stood on the balcony and reread her final letter. Leona, they never really saw you, but I always did. I didn't raise something difficult. I brought up a woman tougher than anyone I've known. You aren't what they labeled you. You're not your failings. You are not your embarrassment. You are not a blunder. You are every good thing I ever did. Live boldly, live proudly, and never change for those who hide behind darkness. I love you forever, Mom. Tears streamed down my face, but this time it wasn't from sorrow. They were from recovery. I wasn't the problem anymore. I was the start. And I was just getting going.